Hello all, welcome to my channel, Scattered and Sundry, where I'm going to talk about movies, shows, and the like that really catch my attention and spark something in me. Today I'm going to talk about Mr. Malcolm's List, a movie from 2022 that I actually put off seeing because I knew I was going to become obsessed. There are two things that are my personal catnip. It's people of color and historical romance novel shenanigans. So if you're not familiar, here's the breakdown. Julia Thistlethwaite and Selena Dalton are childhood friends from school. Though for being honest, they don't seem equally invested in the friendship. They keep in touch through to adulthood, and eventually Julia goes on a date with Mr. Malcolm, who is unimpressed by her, to say the least. Failed date gets turned into a comic, immortalizing Julia's rejection. Then she finds out from her cousin that Mr. Malcolm has a list that he uses to decide if a woman is marriage material. So she gets pissed, decides the whole thing is his fault, and begins making a plan to embarrass him, or making him fall for someone who reveals a list that he doesn't measure up to. Immature, but okay. The center of this plan is Selena, who is in a sticky situation because the old lady she used to work for died, and her family doesn't have enough money to allow her to live at home indefinitely. So when Selena receives an invitation to come to London from Julia, it seems like the perfect time. However, when she gets there, Julia and her cousin bring this plan to her, and Selena's kind of caught between her allegiance to a toxic friend and her morals. Doesn't think the plan is a great idea, but agrees to at least meet Mr. Malcolm. And meet they do. The scene where they meet is so pretty. Selena's costume looks amazing. They're like in this indoor garden. Mr. Malcolm is immediately into her because she talks to him like a regular person, which inadvertently plays into Julia's plans, even though it's not at all what she planned for the night. That's pretty much the theme of their interactions. They connect in a way that isn't in the spirit of Julia's intentions, but helps progress the plan. Anyway, for the most part, Selena doesn't really need much help getting and keeping his attention. Throughout all of this, though, Selena points out that Mr. Malcolm doesn't seem to be what Julia is saying that he is, and eventually takes a stand against it. That doesn't matter much because in the middle of a rich people house party / sleepover, Julia locks Selena in a storage room and goes through with the plan anyway, forcing everything out into the open. Sure enough, Mr. Malcolm is hurt and embarrassed, so he cuts Julia off and listens to what she has to say, despite the fact that his own mother is trying to set up accidental run-ins so they can work things out. Obviously, none of it works, and Julia leaves to go home. At the end of it all, though, Mr. Malcolm's mother sets him straight and tells him that his list is a form of protection, and that if that in a misunderstanding is enough to pass on Selena, then he's a fool. Julia also apologizes and tries to make amends around this time, which is easier for her now that she's secured a man that she likes. The real meat and potatoes of the end is the final 5 minutes or so, when Mr. Malcolm chases down Selena's carriage on horseback and presents her with a new list that just has her name on it. The wide shot of him on the horse approaching the carriage was just so gorgeous. And she didn't just fall into his arms. He had to apologize with the grand gesture, which is a low bar, but it was heartfelt, and they had to wrap up the movie. Like I said, this movie was completely on my wavelength. I will rewatch it the same way I do with Belle, with Gugu Mbatha-Raw. And with this movie, I don't have to wade through racism and self-hatred to get to the romance. So I'm winning. I also like that this movie isn't tied to any historical figures that I'm aware of, so I didn't have to wade through historical misrepresentation or anything like that, and the movie didn't feel the need to justify its diversity. You either caught the vibe and liked it, or you don't, and I respected it. I will say, though, that my only gripe, really, is that there are no dark-skinned black women of circumstance in this movie. That's pretty typical, and not a problem unique to this movie. One could also argue that this is just surface-level diversity, and that though people of color are present, they aren't truly being represented culturally, which is pretty fair, but also not what the target audience for movies like this would be looking for anyway. I know I just wanted frothy romantic hijinks in a historical setting, and that is exactly what I got. I don't know, so often people get stuck in trying to justify people of color's place in these sorts of stories, or act like just because something is set in the past, they couldn't possibly find happiness or love, and that's just so boring, but also wrong, but also a conversation for another day. That's all to say, I liked this movie a lot. And if you have a library card and you want to watch it for free, you probably can on Hoopla or Canopy. I've seen them available there. So, anywho, thank you for watching. If you liked what I had to say, I also have a blog, The Sundry Review. I'll leave a link. Thanks again for clicking on my video. Bye.